The land is trying to kill them, and it is winning. A riverbed lies open and dead, its stones bleached white in a sun that has not been challenged by a cloud in living memory. Beside it lies an antelope that will never rise again, its ribs pushing hard against a hide gone slack. The animals are dying, and where the animals die, the people follow. Behind them, Africa itself is dying. The grass is gone, the herds are gone, the water is gone, and there is nowhere left to run inland. This is a real and terrible window in our story, a stretch of time so harsh that our entire species may have been squeezed down to a few thousand souls. A genuine candidate for the moment humanity very nearly ended for good, when everything we would ever be came down to a few starving families and their wits. And a handful of families are walking toward the one direction they have left, toward the edge of the world, where the dying land finally stops and a cold, roaring sea begins. When the land tried to end us, something else would have to save us. They come over the last ridge, and the world simply ends. Beneath them, a cold gray sea heaves and breaks against black rock, stretching out farther than the eye can hold or the mind can grasp. These are inland people. They have never in their lives seen anything like this, and it terrifies them. It roars, and it never stops roaring, and it smells of salt and cold and something ancient they cannot name. To people raised on the wide silence of the plains, the ocean is not a comfort at all. It is a wall of endless noise that never once goes still. The water is the wrong color, the wrong temperature, moving the wrong way, obeying rules they do not understand. Everything about it says, you do not belong here. And yet there is nowhere else to go, because the world behind them is already a graveyard. Among them is Sethu, a grandmother, and she does not turn her face away from it. She is old enough to have watched the inland world die by slow degrees, season after failing season. She has buried more of her own than she lets herself count, children of the drought, elders of the long walk, faces the dry land swallowed one by one. She is not afraid of a thing merely because it is large, because she has already survived the largest thing of all, which is loss. And so where the young see only a monster of noise and cold, Sethu, who has nothing left to lose, sees a question worth studying. Below the cliff they find a cave, a deep dark mouth in the rock, set above the reach of the waves. This is a real place, and we can walk into it today, Pinnacle Point on the southern coast of South Africa. In the floor of that cave lies the buried record of people exactly like these, who sheltered here at the very moment the whole continent behind them had nothing left to give. They climbed down into it, out of the killing wind, into the shelter of the stone. The cave is dry and defensible and out of the merciless sun, and for the first night in a long time they are not exposed. But a cave is not food, and Sethu stands at its mouth, watching the sea, sensing that everything they need to survive is out there, locked inside a thing none of them yet understands. At first, the sea gives them nothing at all, and it very nearly breaks them. Where the land once offered herds you could see and stalk and chase, the ocean hides its food beneath the water and behind the crashing surf. They are starving within sight of plenty, and they cannot reach a scrap of it. The cruelty of that is almost worse than the empty land they fled, because at least the empty land made no promises. Here the sea seems to hold a feast just out of reach and dare them to come and take it. The first ones who try are simply beaten back, cold and bleeding, by the surf. They try, of course. They wade into the cold water, and the cold shoves the breath out of them, and the waves knock them off the slick rock. The sea here is strong enough to break a person against the stone and drag them under, and it does not care who they are. What clings to those rocks, dark, tight-packed clusters of shells, mussels by the thousand, sits maddeningly just beneath the reach of the surging water. The brown mussels are right there, fat and full, protein enough to save a family, and the sea guards them behind a wall of cold moving water. But Sethu watches the water for days, patiently, the way only the old know how to watch. And slowly she begins to notice a thing that the young, in their hunger and fear, have missed. The sea is not the same from hour to hour. Twice a day it climbs up the rock, and twice a day it slides back down again, breathing in and out against the land. This is the tide, though she has no word for it. She has only her eyes and her patience and a lifetime of learning to read the moods of a hard world. And then she notices something further and much harder to grasp. The size of that pullback changes with the moon. On some days the sea barely retreats at all. On other days, tied somehow to a particular shape of the moon, it drops away much, much farther than usual. She does not know why the moon and the water are bound together. No one will truly know for many thousands of years, but she does not need the why. She only needs the when. The shells that are always drowned on those rare days they might not be. This is the code the cave will remember these people for cracking. The food is real and it is enormous, but the sea only surrenders it a few days each month on the right moon at the very lowest water. Miss the window and you starve beside a full pantry you cannot open. One morning on the right moon, Sethu tells them all to wait. She holds up a hand and keeps them back from the rocks, though their hunger is screaming at them to go. Watch the water, she says. They gather at the cave mouth, uncertain, every eye fixed on the heaving gray below, and the water begins to leave. Not the small, ordinary daily retreat they have already seen a dozen times. This is something else, a great pullback that comes only when the moon is exactly right. The sea goes down and keeps going down, farther than any of them has ever watched it fall. It draws back off the land like a blanket pulled slowly from a bed, and the world beneath it opens. Rock that was drowned an hour ago now steams and glistens in the open air, dripping and alive, and it is covered thick, black, endless beds of mussels, clenched hard to the stone in their countless thousands. Food, more food, laid bare in a single hour than the dead land inland held in an entire failing season, and it does not run. It does not flee or fight or need to be chased across the plains. It simply waits on the rock to be gathered, a harvest instead of a hunt. They run down to it, scrambling over the wet stone, and they pry the shells loose with bare hands and blades. They fill hides, they fill arms, they fill anything that will carry the harvest back up to the cave. Somewhere along the newly opened shore they find more still, a dead seal beached in the surf, meat enough for days on end. But Sethu is watching the water, not the shells, because she knows the tide that gave will just as surely take it all back. The same sea that opened this pantry can close it over their heads without a moment's warning. When she calls them, they go up off the rocks before the water climbs back to reclaim its floor. That night they eat as they have not eaten in a year, the cave warm with fire and the smell of roasting shellfish, the children's faces slick and full. And Sethu understands quietly what she has done. She has learned to read the moon well enough to feed her people. She cannot count. But she can watch, and the watching is enough. What Sethu found once, she now has to hold on to, and harder still, she has to teach it. Because a great tide that comes and goes unremembered feeds you a single time and then never again. The gift was never really the food. The gift is the rhythm, the pattern underneath the food, the thing you can carry in your head and use again and again. So she teaches them to read the sky. When the moon is thin, she shows them the sea will not give much, but when the moon swells full or goes dark and vanishes, the great low water comes and the beds surface. Count the nights not with numbers because they have none, but with the changing shape of the moon, the way you would count the changing face of someone you love. This is knowledge passed from an old woman's eyes into young minds, one patient night at a time. And this is a cognitive leap that should genuinely stop you where you sit. To eat in this place, these people had to link two things that no animal on earth links: the shape of a light in the night sky and the level of the water a full day later. They had to hold a pattern that plays out across half a month and then act on it in advance before its payoff ever arrives. That is planning wrapped around the movements of the heavens themselves, abstract thought reaching up past the horizon. The same kind of mind that tracks the moon to find the mussels will, one day, track the stars to cross an ocean and count the seasons and build a calendar. It starts here, with hunger and a grandmother and the moon, and the danger keeps them honest every single time. The sea that feeds them is the very same sea that would happily drown them, and it changes its mind on a schedule they must respect down to the hour. Go too early and the beds are still deep underwater, out of reach. Stay too late, and the returning tide takes the shore and takes you with it, out into the cold. Every harvest is a wager placed against the moon, and Sethu teaches them, season after season, how to win it. Slowly the knowledge becomes truly theirs, and the cave floor thickens with the shells of 1,000 remembered tides. They are not clinging to bare survival anymore. They have a pantry the sea refills if, and only if, they read it right, and for the first time in a very long time, these people have enough. Enough to stop running, enough to rest and grow and think about something beyond the next desperate meal. And a mind with a little room in it begins, almost at once, to do something no belly ever asked for. And when survival finally loosens its grip, even a little, something entirely new appears in the firelight. Sethu holds up a lump of stone, red as fresh blood, carried up from somewhere along the shore. She's not eating it. She's not chipping it into a tool or a blade. She's grinding it patiently against a flat rock. The stone powders down into a deep, rich red dust that gathers on the slab. This is ochre, and the real cave holds exactly this ground pigment, and tellingly, the very pieces chosen for it were picked out for being the reddest of all. Not the easiest pieces to find, not the most useful for any practical task, the reddest. That single choice is the whole story, quietly changing everything. Red is the color of blood, of birth, of life and its ending, and something in them has begun to feel the weight of it. Because choosing a stone for its color, and for no other reason at all, means the color itself has come to mean something. It means these people now carry ideas inside them that have nothing to do with the belly. Beauty, perhaps, or ritual, or belonging. Or a mark pressed onto skin that says, without any words, this is ours, this is us, this is who we are. This is among the very oldest evidence of symbolic thought found anywhere on the whole earth. Watch how intimate the moment is, and how quiet. An old woman in a cave above a cold and roaring sea, at the far dying edge of a continent, patiently grinding red rock into powder for a reason she could never have explained to us in words. She does it because it matters. Because now at last there is room enough in the mind for things to simply matter, and a mind with room to spare is the beginning of everything we would ever become. This is what the sea truly bought them in the end, not only full stomachs, but a future with space inside it. Space to make meaning, to leave a mark, to become something more than a body fighting for the next hour of its life. The tide fed them, and in the room that the tide made, the human mind stretched itself out and began, for the first time, to reach for meaning. Step all the way back now, and look at what very nearly happened on this coast. Behind these few families, an entire continent was becoming uninhabitable, drying, cracking, emptying of life. Our whole species may have been reduced to a few thousand scattered, starving people, teetering right on the sharp edge of ending forever. And some of them were pinned right here, a cliff at their backs, a dead land behind them, and a cold sea in front that gave up its food only a handful of days each month. By every reasonable measure, this was a dead end, a trap, the last stop before extinction. They should not have made it. Nothing about their situation says they should have walked out of it alive. Pinnacle Point is the only coastal site in all of South Africa securely dated to this brutal window, the one place we have found where people did exactly this and lived. But they read the moon. They cracked the hidden rhythm of the tides, and they turned the indifferent ocean into a pantry, and they survived on a schedule written in the sky above them. When the land tried to end us, the moon fed us. That is not a poem. That is, as near as we can tell, simply what happened on this shore, in the layers of shell and ash still lying in the cave floor. Now think about what that means for you, watching this, so many thousands of generations later. Every single human being alive today may descend from people like these, from a desperate handful clinging to a coast at the bottom of the world. Kept alive by a grandmother patient enough to watch the water, and wise enough to read the moon, and stubborn enough not to give up on a sea that terrified her. Not by strength, not by weapons, not by luck alone, but by a mind that could find a hidden pattern in a hostile world and bet everything on it. The whole vast human story, every city, every song, every voice, every face you have ever loved, may run straight back through a cave exactly like this one, back to a moment when it very nearly did not run at all. The sea did not owe us a thing, but for a few thousand people at the edge of the world, it opened its hand a few days each month, and that was enough. The land tried to end us, and the sea became our mother and kept our whole species from ending.